Hello, this is Derek from Volition Recording Studios. Welcome to my 4-part video series on the artist's journey in the music production cycle. We're going to go over everything that's in the process of the music production cycle, and we're also going to come up with some solutions, some tips to help you overcome some of the struggles and challenges you'll face during this process. So welcome back to part 2 of the video series, to the artist's journey in the music production cycle. So last video we talked about preparation and what that looks like. The more prepared you are, the easier it will be for you to get into the production part of the cycle. So we are finally going to get down to that today, and we're going to go through step by step songwriting. So for songwriting, I will recommend that you have your music written way beforehand, before your first studio recording session. Whether that be at your home, whether that be at a local studio, you want to make sure you give yourself amount of adequate time to prepare the music, as that you can do any last second changes and just have enough practice before you have your first real recording session. And so also, if you do play with musicians or session members or if you're in a band, that everyone has the chance to go over the music, to making last second changes and making sure that the music is polished and ready to go as soon as recording starts. Arrangement. So this is the very creative part of the whole cycle, as that this is where you want to add some spice and some variation in your music. So let's just say your piece is a rock piece and it generally has the guitar, the bass, the drums, and maybe some keys, and that's about 80% of the song, but you want to add some interesting things to make your listeners continue to listen to your music. So this is where I go. If you could add some keys or add some synth pads or add some extra dimension to make your music even more interesting than what it currently is, it will only make it better for your audience and surprise them. Preparation before recording. This is a different type of preparation compared to my previous video on preparation. This is very specific to the recording aspect of it. So the first thing I want to mention is have some bed tracks ready. So that's another fancy way to say just record a raw take of your music. So let's just say it doesn't have to be perfectly played or perfectly performed. It just has to be recorded, so there's something you can work around with. So on the day of recording, you could simply hand that over to your engineer if you did hire a local studio to do your recording that day, and they can simply lay down the track and you can just simply have a good take and just get rid of the bed tracks and replace them as time goes on during the recording session. And also, especially if you're having band members play the music as well, you want to have something for them to work off of, and it's just easier that way, so you don't have to worry about, how does something sound, or you kind of forgot a part. You can simply hear to it and just adjust your performance to it. The second important thing about preparation is that you want to make sure that you have well enough rest before a recording date, and you finish any last second errands so you don't have anything bothering you or at the back of your mind on the day of performance. And we get into the final part, which is just having any tools, any accessories prepared on the day of recording. So that includes, if you do play in a band, that you have any extra strings, extra drumsticks, tools to fix and repair on the go, because you don't want to be going out, especially during recording session time, to your local music shop and lose time to that. Recording. So this is where I bring up two environments depending on what you do. So the first one is DIY, which is at your home or at a friend's place, or the second one being a studio environment. So I'm going to start with the studio environment. So the important thing I want to bring up is that during the recording session, it's very important to address and communicate any fears, any concerns you have during the whole session. So anytime you feel uncomfortable, anytime you feel like something is just not right, make sure you communicate that with the staff there. They're there to help you out, and just like you are human, they are humans as well, and they love music, and that's why they work in the studio that they're in, and that they want to be a part of your journey. And we get into the DIY situation. Let's just say you're recording at home and you decided that you have all the equipment and are ready to go. So there's just a few things I want to bring up to consider before you hit the big red recording button. You want to make sure you have a great location that you're recording in, so at your home. It doesn't have to be perfect. It can be in a closet, it can be in a bedroom, whatever the case may be. Use the location at its best by adding some treatment. So let's just say if you're recording in your bedroom, make sure if you can have an extra mattress or extra towels or extra like really thick dense materials, put it in your room, and what that does is it kind of absorbs the sound and make sure that you're getting a clear quality. And then we get into little details like, how your mics are placed. We call that microphone manipulation. It's just how far and how close it is, and try to experiment. If you have multiple microphones, feel free to try to experiment and see what results you get out of them. And then another one is just make sure that you're using the right type. So let's just say if you're recording a guitar or drums or vocals, that you're using either a dynamic microphone or a condenser. Depending on what you use, let's just say if you are a musician that sings and plays acoustic at the same time, I'll recommend a dynamic microphone, as that it can handle louder peaks and louder volumes. Overall, the final part of it is that you want to make sure that before you hit the record button that the volumes are at a great level. So you want to make sure, if you can get a buddy, have a friend to monitor the volume levels for you, instead of you doing that, it'll make your life a lot easier. So all they need to do is to make sure that the volume on the audio interface where your microphone's plugged into, it has set at a good level. So it's not too high, not too low, just high enough at its best, and it's not clipping, so it's not glowing red. That's essentially what you're trying to look for in a home situation. And then that covers the recording part. So next we get into the mixing. So this is where we can apply this tip to either a DIY situation or simply even if a studio is mixing for you. So these are the few things you want to look for. So we're going to start with, how does this sound on different speakers? So check your mix on headphones, on your car, on your computer speakers, on your cell phone, CD player, studio monitors if you have one. So those are good ways to check your mix. And what you want to do is you want to try different volumes. You want to try normal volume, low volume, and high volume. For low and high, you're specifically looking for a few things, or rather just one thing. So for low volume, you want to make sure that your low-end instrument is being heard. So along with whatever your tracks are playing, you want to make sure like the bass or the kick drum can be heard alongside the music. So that includes the vocals, the guitars. You want to make sure the bass and kick drum can be heard perfectly fine. And that is for a band situation. Similar for if you're just doing any pop or hip hop or a different type of genre music, you want to make sure your low end instruments can be heard well in the low volume department. So we get into the high volume. What you want to check for there is make sure nothing sounds distorted. So what ends up happening is sometimes maybe a part of a track sounds great at first on your studio monitors or whatever you're mixing on, but when you bring it to a different type of speakers, you kind of notice some defects to the mix. So it's like, for example, maybe it sounds great on your headphones, but when you go listen to it on your cell phone, the guitars, for example, if there are guitars in there, it sounds really loud and really obnoxious. Really way different from what you heard the way it was on those headphones. We get to the final part of the production cycle, and that is mastering. Mastering is very similar to mixing in what to check for, as you want to make sure that when you hear the master version, regardless if this is a DIY or it's done by a local studio, you want to make sure that your music sounds amazing on different types of speakers and it sounds consistent. So another thing I want to bring up as well is that if you're doing this yourself, if you're mastering yourself, is that you want to have a reference track. So what a reference track is, find a real life example that is already out to the public and use that as your guide to when you do your mastering. So you want to listen to it and see what they do and adjust your volumes of your master to replicate that in a way. So for example, if you have a song that is a rock piece compared to another fellow rock piece of music out there, and that you notice, hey, maybe you like a certain aspect of it that popped out a bit better, you can replicate that onto your master. And that is essentially what the reference track is about, to make sure that what you're about to release is similar to what is already released to the real world. If you want to save yourself some time and the trouble of having to learn everything, you can go over onto some online mastering sites like eMaster or Lander. Those are great examples of simple drag and drop for a small fee, and it'll just master it for you. So that wraps it up for today's video on the production cycle. On the next set of videos, we're going to talk about well-being and marketing. We're going to talk about what you should look for each of these last two parts that are very connected to the whole music production cycle, and that you can apply this to any of your projects in the future. So thank you for watching this video. If you liked what you saw today, please consider subscribing to this channel for more music and audio related content.